This character means so much to me. It's a character that radiates, for me, identity and strength, charisma, and class. And I really want to do my best to serve this character and honor this character.
Stop everything you're doing. Because this is not just another celebrity breakup story, this is the kind of revelation that makes Hollywood go silent and fans feel physically sick. After months of whispers, cryptic posts, and suspicious silence, Pierre has finally cracked. And what he revealed about his breakup with Teyana Taylor is shaking the internet to its core. This isn't the clean, respectful split the tabloids tried to sell you. This isn't busy schedules or mutual love and light. This is emotional warfare, buried secrets, and a truth so explosive it was never meant to come out like this. Because here's the part nobody was prepared for. The breakup didn't happen quietly. It was silenced. Conversations were cut short. Messages went unanswered. And according to insiders who are now scrambling, there are receipts that tell a very different story from what fans were fed. One leaked voice note, one private exchange, one moment where everything they were pretending to be shattered behind closed doors. And once that door cracked open, the fallout became impossible to contain. Social media sensed it before the headlines did. The unfollows, the deleted likes, the tension you could feel without seeing a single word spoken. And now, with Aaron finally hinting at what really went down, people are realizing this wasn't just a breakup, it was a collision of egos, ambition, heartbreak, and unspoken resentment. The kind that leaves scars. So don't blink, don't scroll. Because what you're about to hear rewrites everything you thought you knew about this relationship. And once you hear it, there's no going back. The truth is, this breakup didn't begin with an announcement. It began with a silence so loud it rattled Hollywood. For weeks, insiders noticed something was off between Pierre and Teyana Taylor, but no one wanted to be the first to say it out loud. They were still technically together, still publicly unbroken, yet behind the scenes, something had already snapped. Friends describe it as a shift in energy texts that took hours instead of minutes, calls that went unanswered, plans that were rescheduled, one too many times until they quietly stopped being made at all. And the scariest part? Both of them knew it was happening, but neither wanted to be the one to say the words first. According to a source who claims they were present for multiple late-night conversations, the initial cracks weren't dramatic. They were subtle, dangerous, the kind that sneak up on you. Aaron, fresh off a career high and drowning in international commitments, allegedly began voicing concerns that sounded reasonable on the surface, but carried deeper frustration underneath. He wasn't accusing her of anything. He was asking questions. Why did it feel like he had to fight for time? Why did moments together feel rushed, squeezed between meetings and fittings and studio sessions? And why, no matter how close they were physically, did it feel like they were living in two completely different worlds? Teyana, on the other hand, was reportedly operating in survival mode. Friends say she felt like she was being pulled apart by expectation from fans, from studios, from an industry that never lets women rest once momentum hits. To her, Aaron's questions felt like pressure at the worst possible time. Not because she didn't care, but because she was already exhausted from caring about everything else. And that's where the miscommunication began. One side felt neglected, the other felt accused, and neither felt truly heard. Then came the messages. Alleged screenshots that started circulating quietly among insiders long before fans ever caught wind. Nothing explicit, nothing scandalous. Just emotionally heavy exchanges that read like two people trying desperately not to hurt each other while still bleeding out in real time. One message, allegedly from Aaron, asks if love is supposed to feel like constantly waiting. Another, allegedly from Teyana, says she's doing the best she can and doesn't understand why it's never enough. Those messages alone were enough to make people close to them nervous. Because once emotional honesty enters a relationship at the wrong moment, it can become a weapon instead of a bridge. The real turning point, according to multiple whispers, came during a private gathering that was supposed to be low stress, no cameras, no industry politics. Just friends, food, and a chance to breathe. Instead, It became the night everything spilled over. Someone present claims the tension was visible the moment they arrived: forced smiles, minimal physical contact, an unspoken distance that felt almost intentional. And when the conversation eventually shifted to future plans, that's when it imploded. Not screaming, not theatrics, but sharp words said calmly, which somehow made them cut deeper. Aaron allegedly admitted he felt like he was slowly being erased from her life. Not maliciously, but passively. That he was always the one adjusting, always the one waiting. Teyana reportedly shot back that she felt like no matter how much she gave, it was never enough to compete with his expectations of availability. That moment, according to the same source, changed everything. Because it reframed the relationship not as two people versus the world, but as two people standing on opposite sides of the same dream. After that night, the emotional tone shifted completely. They didn't officially break up. Not yet. But something had died. Insiders say there were attempts to recover, apologies exchanged, promises made, reassurances whispered late at night. But every attempt felt heavier than the last, like patching a crack in glass that was already spiderwebbing. And while fans were still posting edits and shipping them hard online, the people closest to the situation knew they were watching a slow-motion collapse. Social media, as always, noticed before confirmation ever arrived. The change was microscopic but obvious if you knew where to look. The likes stopped. The comments disappeared. Supportive emojis that once appeared instantly were suddenly missing. Fans began screenshotting timelines, comparing dates, noticing how neither of them acknowledged milestones they previously wouldn't have missed. Group chats lit up. Twitter threads multiplied. Everyone felt it, even if no one could prove it yet. Then came the alleged voice note. A short clip, never officially confirmed, but whispered about like forbidden audio. In it, a male voice sounds controlled but exhausted, saying he can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's not. The female voice that follows sounds hurt, defensive, and overwhelmed, asking why love suddenly feels like another obligation. Whether real or not, the clip detonated privately, because it sounded too specific, too emotionally precise, too familiar to be random. And once that clip made the rounds, the narrative shifted permanently. At this point, insiders say both camps went into protection mode. Phones locked down, circles tightened, statements rehearsed but never released. The goal wasn't to lie, it was to contain. Because the truth wasn't scandalous in a cheating, headline-grabbing way. It was worse. It was human. It was two people realizing they couldn't be what the other needed without sacrificing parts of themselves they weren't ready to give up. And that kind of truth doesn't sell fairy tales. The final straw, according to someone close to Aaron, came during a conversation about timing. Not future marriage or kids, but something more immediate. Availability, presence, emotional space. Aaron allegedly said he needed to feel chosen, not just accommodated. And Teyana, already stretched thin, allegedly responded with a silence that said more than any argument could. That silence lingered. And in that pause, the relationship quietly crossed a line it couldn't uncross. When the official news finally leaked that they had gone their separate ways, the public version was clean, almost sterile, quiet, split, mutual respect, no drama. But behind that carefully curated calm was a breakup that had been unfolding for months, one emotionally charged conversation at a time. And while fans argued over whether it was serious or just a moment, the people who actually witnessed the unraveling knew better. This wasn't casual. This wasn't PR. This was a real connection collapsing under the weight of timing, ambition, and unmet emotional needs. And just when everyone thought that was the full story, just when it seemed like this was simply a sad case of right person, wrong time, Aaron reportedly said something off-camera that made even seasoned insiders freeze. He allegedly told a confidant that the hardest part wasn't losing the relationship, it was realizing how much of himself he'd already lost trying to make it work. That single sentence sent shockwaves through the inner circle. Because if that's true, then this breakup wasn't just about distance or schedules. It was about identity. And once identity enters the conversation, the damage goes far deeper than anyone is ready to admit. By the time the public thought the breakup was handled, the real damage was only beginning. What nobody saw was how fast the emotional fallout spiraled once the relationship officially ended. Because separation didn't bring peace, it brought exposure. And according to multiple insiders, this was the phase where everything they'd been suppressing came rushing out in ways neither of them could control. Pierre didn't just walk away quietly. He unraveled privately. Friends say he went from calm acceptance to emotional whiplash in a matter of days. One minute insisting he understood why it had to end. The next questioning whether he'd been too patient, too flexible, too willing to disappear for someone else's dream. Meanwhile, Teyana Taylor was doing what she's always done. When life gets overwhelming, she stayed busy. Award season events, studio sessions, public appearances where she looked flawless, untouchable, unbothered. But behind that polished exterior, people close to her claim the breakup hit harder than she ever expected. Because once the adrenaline of work faded, the questions crept in. Had she taken his presence for granted? Had she assumed he would always understand? And why did it suddenly feel like every empty room echoed with conversations she wished she'd handled differently? This is where the alleged leaks start getting darker. Screenshots surfaced, never posted publicly, but circulated aggressively among insiders, showing late-night messages sent after the breakup. Not reconciliation attempts, but emotional check-ins that blurred boundaries. One message allegedly read, "I don't know how to stop missing you without losing myself." Another allegedly responded, "Missing me doesn't mean we were meant to last." That exchange alone sent shockwaves through inner circles, because it confirmed what fans had suspected. The emotional cord hadn't been cut. It was fraying. Then came the FaceTime call everyone now whispers about. According to someone who claims to have been nearby, this wasn't planned. It wasn't scheduled. It happened after a long day, when defenses were down and exhaustion made honesty unavoidable. The call reportedly started calm, almost polite, but quickly descended into something far more raw. Aaron allegedly questioned why it felt like he always had to adapt while she kept moving forward untouched. Teyana allegedly fired back that she was tired of being made to feel guilty for chasing what she'd worked her entire life for. Voices didn't rise, but emotions did. And sometimes that's worse. What shook people the most wasn't anger. It was grief. Insiders say both of them broke down, not because they wanted to get back together, but because they finally accepted they couldn't fix what timing had destroyed. That realization is brutal, because it leaves no villain, no closure, just loss. And after that call ended, something changed permanently. The communication slowed, the tone hardened, and the protection walls went up. But Hollywood doesn't allow quiet heartbreak for long. Fans began speculating aggressively, dissecting interviews, pulling quotes out of context, turning every vague comment into a coded message. One viral clip showed Aaron hesitating when asked about love and balance during a press appearance. That hesitation became a symbol. Twitter exploded with theories, claiming he was finally telling his side without telling it. Meanwhile, Teyana posted a cryptic caption about choosing herself, and suddenly the internet decided that was a response. Lines were drawn, sides were chosen, and the narrative grew more toxic by the hour. Celebrities started reacting too subtly, but noticeably. A-listers liked posts they normally wouldn't touch. Mutual friends stopped mentioning either of them in public. One well-known figure allegedly warned Aaron to be careful what he says next, because the story was bigger than his feelings now. That warning matters, because shortly after, insiders claim Aaron recorded a private conversation meant for a close friend, a conversation that was never supposed to leave that room. In it, he allegedly spoke candidly about feeling emotionally sidelined, about shrinking himself to make the relationship work, about realizing too late that love without mutual presence is still loneliness. That recording never officially surfaced, but the rumor of its existence spread like wildfire, and once that rumor hit fan communities, everything escalated. People demanded transparency. Others accused him of playing victim. Some claimed Teyana had emotionally checked out long before the breakup. Others defended her fiercely, pointing out the impossible standards placed on women in the industry. The chaos reached a level where even neutral observers felt uncomfortable. Because this wasn't gossip anymore. It was two real people being emotionally dissected in public. Behind the scenes, damage control went into overdrive. Publicists allegedly urged silence. Statements were drafted and scrapped. Interviews were redirected. The goal was simple: stop the bleeding. But emotions don't respond to PR strategy. And when Aaron reportedly told someone that he felt erased in plain sight during the relationship, that phrase leaked just enough to ignite another wave of speculation. Fans latched onto it like proof. Proof of neglect. Proof of imbalance. Proof that the breakup wasn't as mutual as claimed. Teyana, for her part, allegedly felt blindsided by how the narrative was shifting. Friends say she never intended for the breakup to become a referendum on her ambition or emotional capacity. To her, the relationship had been real, meaningful, and unfortunately incompatible with the moment she was in. But intention doesn't matter once perception takes over. And perception was turning brutal. The pressure mounted. The silence became louder. And every move she made was scrutinized for hidden meaning. Then came the moment that truly fractured any remaining chance of privacy. A supposed insider claimed there was one final message sent short, definitive, and devastating. Not an argument, not an apology, a boundary. Allegedly from Teyana, it said something along the lines of needing space not just to heal, but to protect herself from a narrative she didn't recognize anymore. That message, according to sources, crushed Aaron. Because it confirmed what he feared most, that the emotional distance had become permanent. From that point on, the breakup stopped being something they shared. It became something they survived separately. Aaron reportedly withdrew, focusing intensely on work but appearing visibly drained in candid moments. Teyana leaned harder into independence, strength, and forward motion. On the surface, both seemed fine. Underneath, the unresolved tension lingered like a bruise you don't stop touching. And just when fans thought the storm had peaked, someone close to the situation hinted that there was still one piece of the story no one had heard yet. Not a scandal, not a betrayal, but a truth so emotionally loaded that releasing it would change how everyone views this breakup forever. According to that source, Aaron has been sitting on it not out of spite, but out of fear. Because once that truth is spoken, there's no going back. And the silence surrounding it isn't peace, it's restraint. By the time the dust was supposed to settle, it became clear it never would. Because the final stage of this breakup wasn't about distance or silence anymore, it was about truth, threatening to surface whether anyone was ready or not. According to people still whispering behind closed doors, Aaron Pierre reached a breaking point, where holding everything in felt more damaging than speaking out. Not in a headline, not in a press release, but in private moments where the mask slipped and the weight of everything he'd swallowed started clawing its way up. Friends say he kept repeating the same line over and over, like he was trying to convince himself as much as anyone else. I don't want to hurt her, but I can't keep carrying this alone. What most people didn't realize is that the narrative had already started shifting without either of them intending it to. Fan theories hardened into accusations. Commentary videos turned into verdicts. And somewhere in that chaos, the emotional truth of what happened got distorted into something sharper, uglier, and far more dangerous. Aaron allegedly began feeling boxed in to a version of events that painted him as either bitter or weak, two things he refused to be. And that's when insiders say he considered doing the unthinkable, telling his side fully, consequences be damned. Meanwhile, Teyana Taylor was feeling a different kind of pressure. Friends claim she was blindsided not by the breakup itself, but by how quickly her silence was being interpreted as guilt. Every time she chose not to speak, people spoke for her. Every time she posted anything remotely confident or joyful, it was twisted into proof she never cared. And that hurt cut deep. Because according to those close to her, she had loved deeply but privately. And now that privacy was being used against her, this is where the alleged final leak enters the picture. Not screenshots, not audio, a timeline. A detailed, chronological breakdown of moments that insiders claim explains everything from the first missed call to the last unanswered message. This timeline reportedly exists in a shared document, passed discreetly between a few trusted people, never meant for public eyes. And those who claim to have read it say it reframes the entire relationship, Not as a villain versus victim story, but as a slow erosion caused by incompatible emotional rhythms. Still, even that context didn't stop the internet from doing what it does best, choosing sides. The backlash escalated fast. Fan accounts went dark. Comment sections turned vicious. Old interviews resurfaced and were weaponized. One clip of Aaron talking about compromise went viral, stripped of nuance, treated like a confession. Another clip of Teyana discussing independence was recut to sound cold and dismissive. Neither edit reflected reality, but reality doesn't trend the way outrage does. And as the noise grew louder, both camps reportedly received warnings. Stay quiet, let it pass, don't inflame it further. But silence, at this point, felt like surrender. According to one source, Aaron recorded a long-form video one night, raw, emotional, unfiltered. Not for YouTube, not for television, just for himself. In it, he allegedly spoke about loving someone whose life was moving faster than his heart could keep up with. About shrinking his needs so they wouldn't become burdens. About realizing too late that asking for presents isn't the same as asking someone to give up their dreams. That video has never been released, but the mere fact that it exists has become a ticking clock. Because if it ever surfaces, it won't just add context, it will detonate the story completely. Teyana, on the other side, allegedly made a decision of her own. Sources say she drew a firm line. No public back and forth, no subtle responses, no emotional breadcrumbs. Protect the legacy, protect the peace. Even if it means being misunderstood. That choice wasn't easy. Friends claim there were moments she wanted to scream her side of the story. To explain that ambition wasn't abandonment, that silence wasn't indifference. But she didn't. And in Hollywood, restraint is often mistaken for guilt. As weeks passed, something strange happened. The anger online began to cool, but the curiosity intensified. People sensed there was more. That this breakup wasn't finished revealing itself. Industry insiders started hinting that a clarifying moment was coming. Not necessarily a tell-all, but something definitive. A line drawn in public that would finally stop the speculation. And all eyes quietly shifted back to Aaron, because he was the one insiders believed was closest to breaking. Closest to breaking. Then, during a low-key appearance, he said something that sent shockwaves through fan communities. Asked about lessons learned from love, he paused, took a breath, and said that sometimes protecting someone you care about means letting the world misunderstand you. That single sentence ignited everything all over again, because it sounded like a confession and a warning wrapped into one. Was he protecting her, or protecting himself from saying too much? No one could agree, but everyone felt the weight behind it. Behind the scenes, insiders claimed there was one last conversation between them. Not emotional, not explosive, quiet, necessary. A mutual understanding that whatever they shared would now live in the past, not to be rewritten publicly. But even that conversation couldn't erase the unresolved tension hanging over the story, because some truths don't disappear just because two people agree to keep them private. Now here's the part that has industry circles holding their breath. According to multiple sources, there is still one unreleased piece of this saga that could surface at any moment. Not because someone wants revenge, but because someone might finally need closure. And if that happens, it won't come wrapped in diplomacy. It will come raw, emotional, and impossible to ignore. So where does that leave us? With a breakup that was never just a breakup. It was a collision of timing, identity, ambition, and emotional need. A relationship that burned bright and collapsed quietly, leaving behind questions louder than any statement. And as fans continue to debate, dissect, and demand answers, one thing is clear. The story isn't over. It's just waiting. Because when the final truth comes out, and if you've made it this far, you already know this wasn't just another celebrity breakup story you casually stumbled into. This is the kind of saga that keeps unfolding when you least expect it. The kind people pretend to forget until one sentence, one clip, one leak blows the whole thing wide open again. And trust this, what we've talked about today is not the end. It's the calm before the next shockwave. Because stories like this don't stay buried forever. especially when emotions are still raw and the truth is still circling. So don't be the person who hears about the next reveal secondhand. Don't be the one scrolling past screenshots saying, "Wait, when did this happen?" while everyone else already knows. If you have a theory, if you caught something that doesn't add up, if you felt that pause, that silence, that tension between Aaron Pierre and Teyana Taylor meant more than what we were told, drop it in the comments right now. This is one of those moments where the comments become part of the story. Hit like, not just for support, but to signal you're paying attention. Subscribe, because when the next piece surfaces and insiders swear it will, you'll want to be here before the internet rewrites the narrative again. Walk away now, and you miss the moment everything finally clicks. Stay, and you'll see it unfold in real time.